Okay. Hello, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Fantastic. Seeing a nod from my panelists. Thank you. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and kick us off. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sam Gordon, and I'm a program manager at Smart Growth America. We manage the National Brownfields Coalition in partnership with the Center for Creative Land Recycling, and we're very thrilled to be kicking off this webinar, Community Land Trust Reclaiming Brownfields for Community Benefit, brought to you by the Coalition's Community Development Committee. So we have a really fantastic group of practitioners from across the country who will be sharing some of their experience and insights with you all today. And you can see their faces on the screen in front of you now. And I think you're going to leave with some really, really great ideas. But before I hand it off to them, I want to give you all a quick overview of the National Brownfields Coalition and why we're bringing this topic to you today. So, yeah, we are the National Brownfields Coalition. We are a national network of public agencies, private firms, and nonprofits that are all united around one shared goal, and that is getting brownfields cleaned up and back into productive use for communities. And before we go further than that, I just want to make sure that we're fully grounded from the same working definition of what a brownfield is, and that is the EPA defines a brownfield as a property where expansion, redevelopment, or reuse may be complicated by the presence or even just the potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. And I really want to point out that word potential is what really is really important here because just the uncertainty of whether a site is contaminated or not acts as a barrier for redevelopment. And so that can be enough that uncertainty can be completely, enough to stall a project. And so that's exactly the challenge that many community land trusts run into. So who are we? We serve as a peer learning network of, where we connect practitioners, share case studies, and build collective knowledge across the brownfields and environmental remediation realm. And we advocate for strong federal brownfields policy and funding. And right now, this advocacy work is especially urgent as Congress is actively considering right now the reauthorization of the EPA Brownfields program, which funds and supports the work that we all here do. So sharing and uplifting the impact that these community-driven brownfields projects have is really, really important for showcasing the importance of this work for our federal policymakers. And so, why pair CLTs and brownfields? So, community land trusts work to acquire underutilized land for community benefit for their programs and projects, and they're increasingly encountering contaminated sites and the barriers that come with them. And that includes, cleanup costs, liability concerns, and these can really stop a promising community-driven project completely in its tracks. But there's an opportunity. So, brownfields funding, policy tools, and technical assistance resources exist to help communities and organizations such as CLTs navigate those barriers and unlock community-controlled development. And today is about connecting those dots. And again, right now, the moment's pretty critical. Brownfields have historically been a rare bipartisan bright spot in federal policy. And as mentioned before, with both reauthorization of the federal brownfields program and annual appropriations in play, that funding's not guaranteed, especially given this fall's expiration of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, which is expected to drop federal brownfields funding from about, I believe, 350 million to about 98 million, and that's almost a 75% drop. So yeah, it's the funding now, annual funding now is 350 million, and with that expiration of the IIJA, it's going to drop to about 98 million, 75%. Just want to, urgency is here. So therefore, the case for local, community-driven solutions and stories is more important than ever because by continuing to uplift these stories and share best practices and share these projects, we have to do this in order to shape what federal policy looks like in practice. And so please stay connected with us and even get involved. I would like to introduce one of our longtime coalition members, a true anchor for the coalition. That's Lee Elan, who is the chief of planning with the New York City's Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation, to share some of her thoughts on her involvement with the coalition.
Thanks, Sam. I really appreciate being able to say a few words here. I think it's been valuable for me and for all the coalition members to stay involved with the coalition because we're informed about national issues. It helps us advocate between the National Brownfields conferences, and those are 2 years apart, with EPA and with Congress on federal brownfield policy. For example, the EPA grant funding and their programs and things like restoration of the federal brownfield tax deduction. These are all things we get to work on as members of the coalition. And we get contacts around the country from the public and private sectors about opportunities. And finally, we get to influence the content. For example, this webinar today, we were talking about community land trusts and seeing them starting to get more involved in contaminated properties. And it's a pretty exciting opportunity to be able to bring them together. So you can email the address on the slide or and request to be added to the National Brownfields Coalition mailing list. I'd encourage everybody to do that if you're not on it already. And I'll turn it back to Sam.
Thanks so much, Lee. So fantastic. I will turn it over now to Jaleesa Gilmore, Senior Manager for Groundwork USA and Chair of our Community Development Committee, to introduce our panelists.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Sam and Lee. So hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Jaleesa Gilmore with Groundwork USA, a national nonprofit that supports grassroots efforts to create healthy, green, and thriving communities. We facilitate the Groundwork Network, an affiliate network of place-based nonprofits working to advance community-led conservation and environmental action, and run technical assistance and peer learning communities for grassroots leaders within and beyond our network. And so the National Brownfields Coalition, we're so excited to have 3 organizations from across the country that are joining us today. And as Sam said, really sharing their stories of their local work that they're doing in their communities. And so today we'll have our speakers share brief presentations, and then we'll follow that with a Q&A. And so please use the Q&A function for any questions that you have, and we can get to them after our panelists share with us. And so I'll introduce our 4 speakers. And so our first speaker will be James Yellen. James serves as Grounded Solution Network's Director of Technical Assistance, overseeing their hands-on support to the shared equity and lasting affordable housing field nationally. James has spent his career working at the intersection of public policy, capacity building, and advocacy in support of inclusive housing. Inclusive housing and economic development strategies. He has served on several advisory bodies and boards related to community ownership models, including the Illinois Community Land Trust Task Force, and previously as board secretary for the San Francisco Community Land Trust. James holds a bachelor's degree in sociology and government from Wesleyan University and a master's of city planning from the University of California, Berkeley. And he is based in Chicago, Illinois. We'll then hear from Bee Zhang. They are project manager for the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, where they work with communities towards environmental justice through design, construction, and stewardship of public spaces. They draw from their background as both a community organizer and a licensed architect in California. Bees holds degrees from the University of California, Berkeley, and Brown University. In their free time, they look for birds and trash in the Los Angeles River. Then we'll have Colby Bentley, who's the Assistant Director of Place at Russell, a Place of Promise, a community land trust focused on building Black wealth through investment without displacement, and the founder of Bentley Capital Ventures. Born and raised in West Louisville and shaped by his experience growing up in affordable housing, Colby brings both lived experience and technical expertise to his work in equitable development, housing strategy, and community ownership. He's part of the team advancing the 30th and Madison Street redevelopment, a multi-phase transformation of a 5-acre former brownfield site into a community-centered hub shaped by years of resident engagement. The project reflects a model where environmental remediation, community ownership, and local economic opportunity are aligned to create lasting neighborhood benefit. And then we'll have 2 speakers from the East New York Community Land Trust. Our first is Hannah Anushe, and Hannah is a lifelong New Yorker and Bronx Science alumna. She helped found the East New York Community Land Trust 6 years ago and serves as its director. She grew up in Manhattan in a large rent-stabilized building complex with a powerful tenant associations where her parents still live. Prior to her role at the Community Land Trust, she worked as an organizer and researcher for Unite Here, the International Union of Hotel and Restaurant Workers, organizing with airport concessions and tech cafeteria workers. She has a master's degree from Pratt Institute in City and Regional Planning, where she specialized in housing policy. And then, last but not least, we have Shantanu Due, the Senior Project Manager at the East New York Community Land Trust. Shantanu is a born and raised New Yorker and a graduate of Haverford College with a degree in growth and structure of cities. He is deeply committed to advancing social and public housing initiatives. Shantanu's professional work focuses on fostering democratic, tenant-led processes and addressing the urgent need to prevent the displacement of the East New York community. So we have a wealth of experience and knowledge from our panelists today, and I'm excited to hear from them. So with that, I will pass it to our first speaker, James.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. As you heard, there's going to be a lot of great practitioners working at the local level to share about the important work they're doing. So I will try not to take too much time as I provide a little bit more background and national context setting for what we're going to hear today. So I'm going to share my screen. Looks like that's working properly, so that's great. So yeah, thanks again. My name's James Yellen. I'm the Director of Technical Assistance at Grounded Solutions Network, as you just heard. For those that don't know, Grounded Solutions Network is a national nonprofit. We represent around 250 to 300 organizations and individuals around the country that are working on different aspects of housing with lasting affordability. And we do that in a number of ways, from technical assistance, what my team does, to policy advocacy and support, training, innovative capital solutions. We have a Salesforce platform for helping manage programs. So we're really trying to support the field in a holistic way. But I'm here to talk about community land trusts in particular and how we all feel that they are uniquely well suited to steward formerly contaminated land and get it back into community use. So I'm going to be walking through that a little bit. But before I even talk about what a community land trust is, because I know we're all coming from different backgrounds with different levels of familiarity, I want to provide a little bit of context centered around these three numbers on the screen. I think really paint an important picture for where we're at in the current moment. The first number here is 300,000, over 300,000, right? That represents the number of affordable homes that are mostly federally subsidized that are scheduled to lose their affordability restrictions in the next 5 years. Some estimate that to be even higher. So homes that are financed with low-income housing tax credit, federal grant programs like Home and CDBG, many of them do not have permanent affordability restrictions and are at risk of going back to the market and potentially putting those residents at risk as well. The next stat, 40. So this is representing the 40-year low we are currently seeing in for-sale housing affordability. That is a consequence of the combination of inflation, of historically high median home sale prices, paired with interest rates that have been stubbornly high, reducing the buying power. So we're seeing for the first time, I think ever, the median median income home purchaser would need to spend over $3,000 a month on housing costs to be able to afford the median priced home, meaning affordability is scarce. And that's true on the rental side as well. The last number, 450,000, I think is one that most folks here will be familiar with. That's the number of brownfield sites the EPA estimates nationwide. About 63% of US counties are home to these sites. We know that they sit disproportionately in the same neighborhoods that are most affected by our affordability crisis. So the point here is that these are three deeply interconnected phenomena. They're happening at the same time and happening on the same maps, but we just continue to keep treating them as separate problems, and that's something we need to change. And that's what we're going to be hearing about from folks on this call. And then for those that aren't as familiar with the community land trust model, just a mini history on it. It was born out of the civil rights movement. I think that's really important to note. This isn't a model that dropped out of a policy paper. It grew out of the active work of folks like Bob Swan and Slater King and Charles Sherrod in Georgia in the late 1960s, drawing on collective land stewardship traditions and models from around the world with the goal of liberating Black farmers who are being exploited, taken advantage of by Jim Crow era laws and sharecropping, and really bring them into community ownership and community control of their land. And so from that first model in the late 1960s, we saw that start to spread and adapt to different geographies and local contexts, from the urban to the rural to everything in between. The Burlington Community Land Trust is largely considered the first municipal community land trust, coming out of 1984, made possible by the efforts in part of, at the time, not very well-known mayor, Bernie Sanders. And fast forward to 2026, we have over 300, and I'll talk about what those 300 plus CLTs and shared equity organizations look like at a very high level in a moment. So at its foundation, the Community Land Trust model is a nonprofit that holds land permanently to ensure public benefit of various kinds. And that public benefit can take a lot of different forms. It's most often used for affordable housing and particularly affordable home ownership, but it's not limited to that use. We see land trusts stewarding rental properties, cooperatives, worker cooperatives, community gardens, open space. You're going to hear examples from folks on this call that are doing a really wide range of land development. But the key thing here is just that perpetual affordability, perpetual community benefit, locked in through a 99-year ground lease and a resale formula that makes sure that if something is sold, that it stays at a affordable rate, whatever that land use might be. Another quick point I want to make, and sometimes people kind of confuse or conflate these two models, which makes total sense because they have certain things in common. It's just calling out that land trusts and land banks, while they're not the same thing, and they are in fact built for very different jobs, they are important and complementary tools in the overall sort of community development space, and especially when it comes to brownfield remediation. Land banks are really more intended for the acquisition holding of land that's either become delinquent on taxes or foreclosed, blighted properties that have been abandoned that may have remediation issues. They're there to clear taxes and liens and clear up title issues, potentially even do some of the remediation work before they can become developed. Land trusts, again, are there to steward that land once it is developed, or at least in that transitional phase. They're typically nonprofits. They use a typically tripartite governance body, which means that residents, both from residents on the land as lessees, as well as in the broader community, play a central role in determining what that land trust activities look like and how it operates in the community. They steward any public subsidy or investment that goes into development. So that I think that flow chart on the bottom does a good job of sort of illustrating that way that they work, sometimes in a linear way from early acquisition, cleanup, preparation for development, all the way through stewardship and sale to homeowners or businesses or other users of that land. That comes from the Center for Community Progress, which is another great organization doing work in this space. Happy to talk more about this difference sometime if anyone's interested. We have some resources we've developed with Center for Community Progress, but I know we're short on time, so I'll just continue to give a little more background. Again, this number 330 plus. So this model has really exploded, particularly in the last few years. Just since 2011, there's a 30% increase in land trusts and shared equity organizations based on our census that we conducted in 2022. Honestly, that number's got to be at least 40% by now. Many of them are concentrated in places like California and New York and even in the Midwest, Minnesota, Michigan, but they're really all over the country. There's almost not a single state where there isn't at least one CLT doing work. And we know that they're also serving a different segment of the housing market than other models do. There's a much larger share of BIPOC and first-time homeowners in the CLT model, and we're seeing them take on new and different kinds of development models from, again, housing co-ops to urban gardening to all sorts of new ways of stewarding land. In the context of brownfields, we see them showing up quite a bit among our members. It's not something I can put a statistic on per se, but I know qualitatively everywhere from urban land trusts navigating the industrial legacy on small infill parcels, old gas stations, dry cleaners, vacant factories, Suburban, exurban CLTs working to tear down old commercial strip malls that might have asbestos and lead and other challenges to development and in weak market contexts. And then rural settings where you might see agricultural chemicals, former mill sites, abandoned mines. It's the same model in each case, right? You're trying to remediate those sites, ideally taking the lead from community members and then transform them to community assets and then keep them permanently accessible and affordable. And so I'll close on this note just to illustrate four reasons why I think land trusts are structurally well fit for brownfields. One is just reiterating that permanent stewardship piece that matches the long timelines of remediation. So, if you're spending 10 years to make a site developable, that land trust is going to be there 30 years, 50 years, 99 years later to continue to monitor any land use restrictions. We also know that in many cases, communities were significantly harmed by the toxic uses that come before and during these brownfields. So when those communities are harmed, we believe that land trust and a community governance model can help rebuild some of that trust where harm has eroded it. Finally, or sorry, the third reason here, affordable resale formulas are key because they actually capture the public investment in cleanup and development. Like I was saying at the beginning, we have gotten into a bad pattern of throwing a lot of money at important public benefits only to see those investments fall away 20, 30, 40 years later. These are not 20, 30, 40-year problems. The affordable housing crisis, structural racism, economic inequality, none of these are unfortunately going anywhere anytime soon. So we need to think with that long-term time frame and timeline, and the land trust is designed specifically for that. And then finally, the split ownership that you tend to see in structures with the land use covenants or institutional control, something that comes up a lot in brownfields, that's already baked into the land trust model when you use the ground lease. So there's many different ways in which these pair really well. It's just a matter of being more intentional about how resources and efforts are aligned to advance them in tandem. And fortunately, we're about to hear from a handful of really awesome, exciting local examples from around the country that do just that. So without further ado, I will end it here. Happy to answer any questions and maybe drop some resources in the chat. And yeah, thanks for the time.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, James. With that, if you have any questions for James, please put it in the Q&A or for any of our panelists, and I will pass it to Bees.
Thanks, everyone. And I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you to the co-panelists. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to everybody who has made time for this today by joining us. So I'm Bees from LA Neighborhood Land Trust. We are a nonprofit land trust in Los Angeles, working toward health and justice through the design, construction, and stewardship of parks and gardens. And just to say off the top, because I'm going first and our focus is public open space, we are a member of coalition spaces across the county with affordable housing groups and housing-focused CLTs as well. Our communities deserve both. And so we never compete. We are primarily looking at parcels that are in certain ways less appropriate or too challenging or too complex in some way and become a good fit for parks and gardens. So just to say that off the top. But we were founded in 2002 by a group of advocates and practitioners and community members, really trying to find a scrappier, faster way of working on some of these issues of equity around land. And since that time, we've co-created 30 parks and gardens, about 22 acres of public green open space, serving 500,000 residents across the county. And for those of you who are or are not familiar with LA County, we have a dire lack of public green space. So it's an ongoing challenge. And Devin put in the chat too that there are hundreds of thousands of brownfields just in California alone. LA County is home to nearly 10 million residents across 88 cities, and we rank 90th in the last year's Trust for Public Lands park score. So that we have a lot of work to do, but thankfully there's a lot of us out here doing it. I want to share broadly that, I think one of the benefits for me as a architect and coming from that background of working within a land trust is that a third of our team is primarily focused on stewardship. Another third of our team is primarily focused on policy and advocacy and the direct organizing of residents. And then there's just a couple of us who are really pushing for the park implementation, the design and construction. And having all of us together in one office is really beneficial for all of these projects to move forward. I also would be remiss not to mention that we are working across Tongva, Kizh, Tataviam, and Chumash lands, and there's a direct contradiction of doing this work, right? Any land project in the context of settler colonization relies on the foundational theft of Indigenous lands. So I'm just highlighting within the 5 minutes I have some of the Indigenous-led work, California Native-led work that is happening as well that we are in partnership with, and that this discomfort and complexity is something to lean into rather than to shy away from. So the project I wanted to talk to you about today is the Jefferson Park and Affordable Housing Project. It's about 2 acres of former oil drilling site that was shut down through the organization of community members in West Adams, West Exposition Park, Normandy, this part of South Central Los Angeles that has been historically Black American with a dynamic recent history of migration as well from Latin America. In 2003, LA Neighborhood Land Trust was able to actually successfully acquire this site and help push forward with our partners this vision of affordable housing and public open space. So this is an image of the site taken right before it was shut down. So that nearest bedroom window of one of our neighbors is 3 feet away. And just to share a little bit of who these partners are, Redeemer Community Partnership is a place-based organization that's our primary partner. We are together part of a larger coalition across the county, Stand Together Against Neighborhood Drilling. 1 in 3 Angelenos is living near an active or idle oil well. So this is a very pervasive situation, and we're hoping that this project becomes a model across the city and the county. We have affordable housing developers that are on deck, as well as a land care organization called Test Plot that we've recently brought on. And the acquisition, the biggest question people have, how do we fund all of this? There are a lot of different kinds of funding sources. Our public partner, Assemblymember Reggie Jones Sawyer, helped us secure $10 million for acquisition, as well as a slew of other public partners that we've been able to successfully seek public funding for, including CClear, which is providing $10,000 in technical support for us. This is another image of the site as it's been operating. One of the largest issues in South LA is through decades of environmental racism and purposeful under-resourcing and under-regulation of environmental standards. These neighbors have been dealing with noise, air pollution, sound pollution, contaminants on their lawns, and other kinds of chemical and other endangerments to their health and safety. People have been experiencing migraines, cancers, asthma, and even miscarriages. And this was a site that was consolidated in the 1960s by an oil operator, specifically for this purpose. I like to show these images quickly as well because it demonstrates kind of the much larger footprint of some of these brownfields, particularly in Southern California and other areas with oil history. This shows the extent of the oil wells originating from one site, and ours is the one on the bottom right. In West LA compared to South LA, we don't have the same kinds of regulations upheld, and that was primarily how community members organized to shut it down, by forcing the city's hand to say, hey, you need to comply or you need to get out. And rather than complying, the oil operator decided to get out. And this was a huge victory for the community and also only the beginning. And so where we stepped in as LA Neighborhood Land Trust was really helping to facilitate community visioning, that this community understood in West Adams, West Exposition Park, that without a strong vision of what they wanted to see happen, it would be very easy for our developers with ulterior motives to step in. And we were able to work with them to identify just to go back for a second, their top priorities actually being both affordable housing and a community park. And then thirdly, a community center for all of their continued activities and programming to have a space, have a home. And so our role became primarily helping with community visioning and outreach, successfully negotiating an acquisition, which is very difficult as an individual, but slightly less difficult as a nonprofit, and in remediation planning, which is the moment that we're in now. I just have like two more slides. I wanted to share that in the interim, as we're doing this remediation planning with Department of Toxic Substances Control funding, and just kind of identifying what all of the mitigation strategies will need it to be. We've not rested. We've taken the opportunity of the vacant lot even to create a youth-led restoration garden. Some of these students, high school students who are our youth fellows with Test Plot, right now are, in fact, were participants in direct actions back in 2013, 2014 with their parents to shut down the site. So there's a lot of community building, and what we mean by, justice through parks and gardens and through land projects is that every step of the way is an opportunity for us to actually strengthen our communities, not just point A to point B, something gets done, right? Every single element of how we do it is, in fact, part of the equity and the justice that we're seeking. So we have quite a bit to go, quite a bit behind us, and quite a bit to go. We just got a $500,000 grant to do site planning and design for the park, and we're hoping to be in construction by 2027. So with that, I'll stop. I hope I stayed within my time. Happy to answer questions and stay in touch with you all. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bees. Yeah, again, any questions for Bees and the project in LA, please put it in the Q&A, or if the chat is easier for you. And so with that, we'll go to our next speaker, Colby.
Alright. Well, just want to start off by saying thank you for everybody joining this webinar today. My name is Kobe Bentley, and I am representing Russell Place of Promise in Louisville, Kentucky. You might also hear me call Russell Place of Promise RPOP for short. And today I am going to be presenting the 35th Madison redevelopment project. As you can see with this beautiful rendering, this is going to completely change the Russell community and the neighborhood. This project sits at an intersection of community land stewardship, brownfield reuse, and investment without displacement. So within the next few minutes, I'll walk through the site, the history, and how we are transforming it into a long-term community asset. Next slide, please. So just to give you some background, Russell Place of Promise is a community land trust. I also view us as a community-based developer as well, because in everything that we do, we include the community into our decision-making. Our focus is investing in the people and the places that make the historical Black Russell neighborhood special. And our vision is very clear. We want to build Black wealth through investment without displacement. And that means the land stays connected to the community benefit, not just market focus. Next slide, please. So this project is located at 3025 West Madison Street in the Russell neighborhood. The goal is to transform a long abandoned brownfield into a mixed-use neighborhood anchor. The site will include medical offices, housing, retail, food, and also financial services. This is about restoring access in one place: services, jobs, and opportunity. Next slide, please. So this, what you see on the left side, this is a timeline of all the community engagement that we have done over the years. The site right now is currently owned by Louisville Metro government, but it was committed to RPOP in 2022. Community input has shaped this project since 2018 through meetings, design sessions, and resident feedback. It's one of my favorite things to do, and it's actually what attracted me to RPOP as well, just the community engagement when it comes to the decision-making process. And it shows that this is a community-driven development, not just a development happening to the neighborhood, but shaped by the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So this is who will actually be impacted by the neighborhood. The project centers Russell residents. The neighborhood is predominantly Black. The median income is around 27,000 per year. 44% of the residents live below poverty, and half of the households lack access to a vehicle. Life expectancy is 8 years lower than the city average, which is insane. Um, but these conditions reflect long-term disinvestment. So this project is about restoring access and opportunity. Next slide, please. And this development will bring new services and amenities to the neighborhood. It will also create jobs and economic activity. It supports entrepreneurship and small business growth. This will be an anchor to the corridor while also supporting long-term community ownership. There's been a lot of investment that has been currently happening into the Russell neighborhood from a new hospital that has been in the area for over 100 years, a opportunity campus with the Goodwill, and right across the street there is a indoor track and field stadium that the Urban League has built. Do you mind going to the next slide, please? So here's a little history on the site. The site has a long industrial history. It was used for tobacco manufacturing and later for light industrial uses. Environmental assessments identified soil concerns, including PAHs, arsenic, and also lead. So that means that the cleanup is the key. It is the unlock. It makes the site safe, usable, and ready to return to the community. Next slide, please. And this project is supported by a strong team of partners. That includes BWI Development as our development partner, and also Perkins and Will supporting the design. Perkins and Will's involvement helps us ensure that this site is designed not just for the development, but for long-term community uses and quality of life. This is the kind of work that requires alignment across public, private, and nonprofit partners. Next slide, please. And so our focus is early activation. So that would include retail, restaurant spaces, offices, apartments, and community green spaces as well. It will also include tenants that have been selected by the residents. One of those tenants include a Black-owned childcare provider and also a retail marketplace. And so what we're also trying to do is make sure that we are creating energy, access, and opportunity from day one for the people who will be using this site. Next slide, please. And we all know development has its costs. So this is a multi-phase project totaling roughly $150 million. The first phase is going to be about $27 million. So this project really uses a layered capital strategy. You have tax credit equity, public funding, private investment, you got philanthropic capital, and also brownfield remediation funds. The key takeaway here is that it's going to take us multiple aligned funding sources to make this project feasible. Next slide, please. Right now, the site is fully entitled for its intended use. The next step is a development plan approval. We plan on breaking ground later this year, and we already have experience raising over $30 million and is preparing a capital campaign tied to this project. This is a project that we plan on moving forward and executing for the community. Next slide, please. So our next focus is on execution, finalizing the site control, advancing remediation, aligning capital, and moving to the phase one construction. At this time, continuing community engagement to stay aligned with the residents is a key priority. So we want to make sure that we continue to stick to our mission. And next slide, please. I know I've just seen a lot of questions pop up. I'll be happy to answer all of those. But just to close, 30 for Madison is more than a redevelopment project. It's a model for how community land trust can reclaim underutilized land, address environmental challenges, and create a long-term community benefit. This is pretty much what it looks like when land is reinvested into the community. And I'm gonna pass it back to Jaleesa.
Yeah, thanks, Colby. Yeah, thanks so much. And yeah, there are some questions in the chat that we'll get to during Q&A. So with that, I'll pass it to East New York Community Land Trust, Hannah and Shantanu.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Anouche. I'm the director of the East New York Community Land Trust.
I'm
And-
Shantanu, Senior Project Manager at the East New York Community Land Trust.
Next slide. So the East New York Community Land Trust was founded in 2020 by a number of community leaders and activists in East New York and Brownsville, Brooklyn. And the goal has always been to take land out of the private speculative market and bring it under permanent democratic resident control. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that. But the most essential piece of it for us is having a strong democratic membership. So we have over 100 dues-paying members who lead the work of our community land trust. And that's really at our foundation. Next slide. And our members are residents of East New York and Ocean Hill, Brownsville, two working class neighborhoods in Brooklyn that are predominantly Black, Latino, and South Asian. And there's a lot of low and middle income homeowners in the neighborhood. There's also a significant industrial and manufacturing presence. And there's 2 above ground subway lines that run through the neighborhood, and there's debris that comes from that. And just in general, there's a real aging housing stock. Buildings are over 100 years old across the neighborhood. And in 2013, the neighborhood was designated as a brownfield opportunity area, and many brownfields were identified for potential redevelopment. But I do want to flag that one of the challenges is that since there was this neighborhood-wide rezoning of the neighborhood in 2016 that allowed for much higher development, land prices have increased tenfold. So it's made that work even more difficult. It also just highlights the need for community land trusts, which keep housing and land affordable. Next slide.
Yeah, so as Hannah mentioned, a lot of the buildings in East New York are extremely old and have just long-standing repair needs. Lots of properties have not undergone significant upgrades since their construction, linked to disproportionate carbon emissions, inefficient energy use, aging heating systems, inadequate insulation, et cetera, et cetera. And that has also been coupled with the fact that there is, a brownfield opportunity area, and there's been lots of this manufacturing and different environmental risks for the residents. And East New York CLT focused mainly on the preservation and preventing displacement of residents of East New York, and helping provide long-term stability. That means also being considerate of long-term health of residents, which also means doing a lot of this remediation work. So coupled with the fact that the housing stock is extremely old and dilapidated, and the fact that it's a brownfield area, there's this cycle of disrepair. It's not uncommon to find vapor or radon in these buildings due to contaminated soil or groundwater, and this can go undealt with for decades, especially with slumlords not looking after the properties. So talk about a couple projects here, but our first one is 248 Arlington Avenue, our current development site. It was historic, and that it was the first time a CLT has privately purchased a multifamily property in New York City. We did this through a combination of public funding, private financing, donations, and low interest investments. And the building is really representative of many of the aforementioned issues, with potential environmental hazards, lack of repairs, and increased carbon emissions. It's a 100-year building, and we'll be doing a major gut rehab on the property to make sure that it meets modern energy standards, reduces carbon emissions, and improve living conditions for the longstanding tenants of the property. So, the deficiencies highlight the urgent need for a comprehensive rehab to ensure safety, health, efficiency, and long-term sustainability of the residents. I think one thing Sam mentioned earlier was thinking about the potential environmental hazards here, not just what we know to be there. And we know the area that 248 Arlington Avenue sits within, and all the potential environmental risks associated with that, along with there's been a series of slumlords. So we conducted a phase 1 study on the building, where we conducted soil testing, looked at the historical uses of the building and around the building, conducted indoor air sampling to ensure to get an understanding if there are potential health hazards, and to make sure if there are, that we're actually addressing those. Inserting something like a vapor barrier or whatever is needed. So the phase 1 did come back clean for 248 Arlington. So we're continuing on with the process of looking to rehab the building, hoping to can begin construction later this year, or the beginning of next year, and then eventually convert it into a limited equity co-op. Next slide, please. Yeah, so our next development site is at 161 Jamaica Avenue, where we're purchasing a historic manufacturing and commercial building and turning it into the East Brooklyn Liberation Center, which will be home to a community space, office space for several local non-businesses and nonprofits, including us, the East New York CLT. It'll be an organizing hub. It'll have community meetings, cultural and arts exhibitions, and more. Importantly, it will provide deeply affordable community and commercial space forever, as it will be community owned by the CLT forever. So the idea here is to provide a much needed community space and office space for the area. Next slide, please. So we're currently in contract to purchase the property, which we should be completing the acquisition in the next month or so. And similar to 248 Arlington, the property is also close to potential environmental hazards, both within the building with its former uses, which include wagon painting and sealed doors, which have potential hazards of lead and asbestos, as well as proximity to other environmental risks, proximity to oil spill, to a transformer, electronic transformer, and other potential properties that can leak contaminants into the oil, into the soil. So as we were purchasing and are in the process of purchasing this building off the private market, one thing that was really important for us was negotiating an environmental contingency period within the contract, which we did for a 3-week period. And this allowed us to conduct phase 1 and phase 2 testing, which allows us to do, similar to before, soil and indoor air sampling, vapor testing, doing a more comprehensive analysis of the historical uses of the building in the area to get an exact sense of the environmental conditions that the property is facing. So this is important because if there is potential remediation, we didn't want to have to enter a contract for the building and then be faced with the financial and labor burden, or have the city and taxpayer be overly burdened with the cost of this remediation work. So this contingency gives the space to negotiate with the seller, and in the end to make sure that that the building stays long-term, reducing costs on the building, whether it's through acquisition costs or whatever the rehab costs would be, but making sure also that the property will stay safe as a community space, expecting hundreds, thousands of folks to come in, protecting all the future occupants long-term. So next slide, please. Oh, and then it did come back, both phase 1, phase 2, we decided did come back clean. So,
so finally, I just wanted to share a little bit about our community planning work that we do. We think of stewardship in a much broader sense than just individual property ownership as well. And so we've been engaged in a campaign for environmental justice for the Jewel Streets, which is a sub-neighborhood within East New York that experiences severe flooding and where residents aren't connected to the New York City's sewer system, so they still rely on septic tanks in 2026. And, you can see me there actually in 2021 getting a water sample. And that is not a little creek or river. That's actually the street that is so severely flooded. And so yeah, I mean, we launched the campaign with residents in the area and, fought for the city to address the environmental hazards. And we had a big win in that in 2024, the city committed to investing 150 million in the area. And launching a neighborhood plan. So they recently completed the neighborhood plan. And the city plans to release a request for proposal for the development of a site in the area that's 17 acres. So it's a huge swath of land. That's a landfill. And there's a defunct incinerator nearby. So we know the soil is extremely contaminated. But as you can see in this illustration at the bottom right, the city plans to, wants to see hundreds, if not thousands, of new units of housing on the site. So, we're really working to make sure that the city is properly studying the environmental conditions on the site, and that they're going to do like a really thorough remediation before any development happens on the site. And ultimately, we do want to see the site be brought under community ownership in our CLT. But yeah, I mean, we need to make sure on the front end that the soil is remediated and that there aren't going to be health issues that emerge much later. Next slide. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. And we'd love to stay in touch. Put our contact info there.
Thank you so much, Hannah and Shatanu. So we have a lot of questions in the chat. I think these will start with the questions for you. There were some questions around what environmental assessment was done to ensure local people were not exposed to contaminants in the restoration work on the site as shown in the slide. And then there was also questions about brownfield remediation or any bio remediation as well.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the questions. And it's such a challenge. Props to all of the presenters to try to distill so much information. I know I skipped through a lot. So the questions help me be able to share what I missed in the presentation. So I'm going to answer this two-ish ways. So one is just most directly in technical language, there have been multiple phase 1 and one phase 2 assessment that have been done, both by the oil operator when they were vacating. So when they were closing, decommissioning the site, they had to do all of that. And then also by us during the due diligence process. So it's top of mind. We would not have brought people back onto the site at all if we felt that there were really, really harmful chemicals that were about to endanger people's health after 60, 70 years of exactly that happening. What we found was that the shallow soil horizon that was left after the oil operator decommissioned and then graded the site is about roughly the same or comparable to soil in urban Los Angeles anywhere. And I'm smiling because I'm that's not great, but it's comparable, right? And then the other piece that was sort of oh my gosh, this is so classic LA is what we're finding now with our really deep multi-year soil vapor probe testing. What I called remediation planning is us doing this deeper look. That's a longer term assessment, is that there are volatile organic compounds that are coming up in the deeper soil. They're actually coming from a plume that was left over by dry cleaners across the street. And so there's going to be a lot of implications. So the plume is migrating onto our site. So it cannot be remediated. It must be, because it will continue to come onto our site, if that makes sense. I can try to explain that better if not. So mitigation is our primary strategy for building housing, because the danger would be if the buildup of VOCs within a residential space would be poisonous. But kind of off-gassing into the atmosphere very quickly dilutes, right? So again, sort of multiple ways of thinking about what is safety and what is health in this situation. That's kind of the technical answer. I want to say success for us looks like everybody, all of our stakeholders, all of our community members, all of our partners moving forward together, right, towards our shared goal. So science communication has been huge. So it's just like a huge plug for our environmental consultants and all of the different kinds of academic partners, organizers we've all sort of had to like up our game, whatever position we're in or whatever stage of our careers we're in order to sort of think and speak thoughtfully about this. And so just a lot of gratitude for that. We have been hosting quarterly community meetings with our neighbors, specifically just to say like, okay, here's a new set of data charts and maps. Let's look at them. Let's invite someone, from a nearby university and help us think through it. Let's think about what this means. And that's sort of a process that we've done on other projects as well, where there's rightful distrust of the scientists, who are coming from our public partners, often, whether it's deserved or not. Oftentimes the institutions deserve it. So that distrust is something that we have to all actively work towards understanding and then kind of moving through it, right? So that's why multiple assessments were conducted and sort of broken down into different pieces. So I think I addressed both of those questions. We're not actively remediating, we're looking at mitigation, and we've done actually like double duty in terms of the kinds of environmental assessments that we've had and tried to include community members at every step of the way to understand it alongside us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bees. And so we have like 3 minutes left. Colby, I believe this question for you, if the site was in public ownership, curious if folks have found it more expedient for the locality to move the site through assessment and cleanup, or more expedient to acquire prior. And then, anyone else can also answer this too. There was also a question about for projects that required land use entitlements, did your localities offer any sort of fast tracking or compliance or services for, any of the type of hurdles that that developers would. So yeah, no, that was a lot. And I know we don't have much time to answer it, but Colby or anyone else who wants to answer, site acquisition, public ownership, etc.
I would say it hasn't been a fast track because we're still going through the process of owning the land, which it takes a while. But I think a part of that is also because of the changes in our local administration. So we're getting used to working with new people, and new people are getting used to working with us. But from a state level, we did have some help in regards to getting some funding for brownfield cleanup.
Thank you so much. All right. So within the last 2 minutes, I think I'd love to hear from all the panelists. If you can take 15 seconds to just share advice for other CLTs, other folks who are interested in doing work like this. Yeah, there was a lot of interest of like, what advice do you have for us? So I think if you can just share your top level, like, hey, if you want to get started, what advice you would have for the folks in the audience. And then while you all are thinking, I'll just mention James answered some questions in the chat, in the Q&A about funding and partnerships with the government as well. So if it's all right, maybe I'll start with James. Yeah.
Yeah, I can take a first stab at it. I think the other folks will have better hands-on experience from their specific efforts, but I would say don't discount the amount of time it takes up front to create a CLT, to do it. You're trying to do it with community at the center. You're trying to address these harms that have accumulated over sometimes decades. There's no I know everything feels urgent, but you don't want to shortchange the process, building trust, really being thoughtful about your service area, who you're trying to work with, what you're trying to accomplish. So I would just say laying that foundation is really critical.
Yeah, we can go to the East New York Community Land Trust.
Me?
Oh, Well, yeah,
Or-
B, since you're already off mute.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll hear
sorry.
from you.
No, I didn't. I thought I wasn't sure if you said my name. Okay, sorry if I jumped ahead. I will go though, just for the sake of time. I agree with what James said. I would just say we are truly not alone. We are always asking people in our network, how did you do that? Or what would you suggest? We are always taking calls. You can email me and say, I want to just chat about my project. Let's just think about it. It's process, focused, a lot of this work, right? As James was saying, like one step at a time, one day at a time. So it's okay if we don't have an immediate next thing to do. Let's just talk about it and learn from each other.
Thanks. Hannah and Shantanu.
I think everyone said it. I mean, I think for us, what was foundational was, or what was really important was laying the organizing foundation and having a really strong membership that had, and like having leaders who we really worked on developing and this really strong board, because that's going to help you weather all the challenges, and actually grow. And then, we're always getting ideas from and advice from other CLTs, and we've got a lot of inspiration from Oak CLT in California. And we recently went to the Canada CLT Network conference and learned a ton from the CLTs over there. So that's very key.
Great. Yeah,
Um,
and
I guess I will follow up and say, kind of reiterate what everyone said. Just lean on the resources that you do have. We are a newer CLT, so one of the things that we did was we got involved with the Grounded Solutions Network. They were a great help to us and all the things that they do. We also lean heavily on our community. The CLT gives the community a structure to reclaim land, guide redevelopment or development intentionally, and also connect investment to long-term community benefit instead of short-term speculation.
yeah. Yep. Well, thank you all so much. Sorry for going over a little bit, but yes, thank you so much to our speakers, the National Brownfields Coalition for organizing, and for our audience and attendees for your great questions. And hopefully we'll find a way to follow up on some of those questions that we didn't get to. But yeah, any last words, Sam, before we wrap it up?
No, huge shout out to all our panelists today. Such great work, and we got to continue uplifting these great projects and great stories that are happening around the country. So thank you all for coming today.